Hi, everyone, and welcome to Right in Front of My Face, the podcast talking about big things happening right in front of us. It's been a minute since I've released an episode. I know there have been numerous challenges this summer, from interviews canceling to kids' schedules to technical difficulties, but here we are, and I'm very excited about today's topic. This conversation deals with the one thing that has been literally directly in front of my face nonstop for the last 18 months, my children. I have two kids, aged 10 and 6, and the pandemic has brought me and many of us the very unique challenge of having no distance from our children. They are with us all of the time. And with that comes the stress of constant parenting. I personally feel very drained by the last few months of summer. I find myself short, super limited on patience, and so worried that I'm damaging my kids somehow by setting some pretty strict limits and then having to enforce them. My anxiety is for sure creeping back because I have no headspace, or physical space for that matter, to think quietly and organize my thoughts. The word mom has now become something I kind of dread hearing 100,000 times every day because it means I have to fill a need. Someone's needs, no matter how small, require some piece of my attention to fill, and admittedly, I'm exhausted and stressed. Enter Dr. Kate. Dr. Kate Monahan is a developmental psychologist and an expert in childhood development. Her company, Parent with Science, is dedicated to helping parents through their journey with advice based in science, not on trends, not on Google. Her Instagram, @ParentWithScience, is an awesome follow. She's done all the research for us and tries to pass along what works for kids from a scientific perspective. Her straightforward advice is usually dead on. She just wrote a book called How to Be a Relaxed Mom: The 3 Secrets to Avoid Modern Mom Stress and Raise Great Kids. Dr. Kate, I need you now, and so do all of us. This is a conversation for everyone, moms, dads, or anyone who is with a child and needs someone on their team to give them actual practical strategies. Zero judgment and a high five at the end of the day. This is a longer conversation than usual because I didn't want to cut anything out. We ended up flipping the mics back on to talk about adolescence, and I'm also going to do a follow-up on that. We get real about our own experiences and honest about our struggles. Please enjoy, and my greatest hope is that you take something away from this next hour and a half that will help you on your parenting journey. Kate, I know your time is super valuable, and I know you also have kids in school.
No, they're not in school.
Wait, when did they start?
Next week.
Oh, that's right.
They're home with colds.
That's so much better it happened this week. So much better it happened this week. So today, Dr. Kate has agreed gracefully to come onto my podcast and talk to me about all things parenting. But the timing worked out specifically incredibly because I did not know that Kate has written a new book during the pandemic called How to Be a Relaxed Mom: The 3 Secrets to Avoid Modern Mom Stress and Raise Great Kids. So we had talked about a year ago about her coming on the podcast to talk about parenting, and then COVID and being at home and working and everything happened. So we have kind of postponed, but I had you on the hook for this season. And so it finally worked out. And when I reached out to her, Kate was like, oh, well, I've been working on this new book. And it's out, and I have a copy of it in my hands. And so I'm so excited to talk to you. Now, I will disclose that we are very good friends.
It's true.
And we have been good friends for a long time. You are absolutely on my board of directors. In my life, I have called you crying on more than one occasion about parenting things.
That's what friends do. That's what we all do.
But you are a PhD, you are a doctor, you are a developmental psychologist, graduated from the University of Pittsburgh.
No, I was faculty at the University of Pittsburgh.
Oh, you were faculty. Yeah, so where'd you go to school?
My doctorate is from Temple in Philadelphia. Okay. Yeah. And then, I was faculty at a couple different places, but most recently, University of Pittsburgh.
Where did you go to undergrad?
I did my undergrad at the University of Portland.
That's right. Okay. So that's where you went UP, Temple.
UP, Temple, University of Washington, University of Pittsburgh.
Okay.
Back to the University of Washington. And then I've been working independently with Parent with Science ever since then.
So we'll talk about you being the CEO and founder of Parent with Science in a second, but I want you to describe what your PhD is in because I don't want to mess it up.
Yeah. So I'm a developmental psychologist, which basically means I have spent a really long time thinking about how kids grow up and how we're supposed to help kids grow up well, and well being a very general way to describe kids. But what the goal is, or the reason that I got into it, I guess is probably the best way to talk about it, is that I really wanted to understand resilience. And I really wanted to understand why, I grew up in a small town in Oregon, and there were very few people who left and did things, and, lots of, problems, economically. I had lots of friends have babies during high school. And, it was very interesting to see kind of who went on to really thrive in life, by whatever your definition is of that, and other people who really didn't. And so when I went to college, I got very interested in that, in psychology. And then when, college was ending, I was like, I think I want to do this for forever. And so my interest in developmental psychology was always from the lens of intervention, prevention, and like developing resilience, right? Trying to set up government policies, government structures, intervention programs, resources for people so that we can actually support and help kids do well, whether or not they have a lot of advantages or whether or not they don't. And so that was really my lens for why I chose developmental psychology. And, my career over the last 15 plus years has really been heavily rooted in research and then application. So it's like, I finally got tired of writing these academic papers that people weren't really reading. I mean, they were excellent, but you probably haven't read an academic journal in a while.
No, but I was looking. So. You are a prolific academic writer.
Yes, compared to some.
Yeah, you've written a lot, and actually they have been cited a lot.
Yeah. No, I think that I had a very successful career as an academic. And I really loved, working with interventions, evaluating interventions, looking at child development, understanding processes. But I can tell you the exact moment why I started Parent with Science. I was teaching Intro to Developmental Psychology. So, from pregnancy all the way through, when you kick them out of the house eventually, if they don't leave on their own accord.
I don't know if that'll happen.
Well, sometimes they can just stay. That's fine too. There's nothing wrong with that.
I'm like, is my son ever not going to want snuggles?
So one of my kids has a plan to move next door, which I feel like is reasonable.
Yeah.
So that's great.
That's fair.
Yeah.
Everybody gets their own room.
Yeah, that's fine. And I would like it if my kids stayed close by, but I have no control over that.
Right.
So we'll get there when we get there. But, I'm teaching Intro to Developmental Psychology, which, I'm a pretty animated person, and it's, you teach in these big lecture halls. So I had 300 students, and I'm literally on a stage because it's a huge, you're putting on
auditorium.
A performance. Yeah. Right. And you're putting on this teaching performance. Right. And so, this is really going to date me, but this was right when everybody started. Well, everybody's had smartphones for forever, but what people would do is they would take pictures of you with your slides behind. They were trying to take pictures of your slides to study and cram for tests. Right. But so I would put up a new slide, and then 25 cell phones would pop up, and flashes would go off. So you would feel like this comical, academic celebrity, which is not true,
It's true.
But so me being me, I just started posing in front of my slides. I would put up a slide, and then I would over dramatically pose next to them, because immediately, 30 people are taking your picture. And it was just this really funny way of connecting with students, which I've always loved doing. I love working with people and building connections with other people. And I was talking, it was probably a riveting lecture about what we need to do to help kids succeed in school, right? And this, I was posing in front of the slides as usual, making, totally engaging my students, right? And this person came up to me, and, you're teaching undergraduates, and, young woman is 20, maybe. And she's like, Dr. Kate, this was so great. I learned so much about how I'm going to help my future kids succeed in school, but I'm not going to have kids for 10 years. So how am I supposed to remember this in 10 years? And I heard that and I was like, you're right. I am totally performing to the wrong room right now. I should be performing to groups of parents because I know this and I can make this easier for parents charting this course. There are things that we know, that we scientifically know help raise great kids. And that was the moment when I was like, I'm going to move in a different direction. I'm going to work in a more applied area. I'm going to work much more with parents, much more in the community. And so that's sort of my long path of how developmental psychology ended with where I'm at now.
So let's talk about Parent with Science because it is a resource I use almost every day. Well, every time you post something on Instagram, you're so insightful. And I truly do intake the information. Like sometimes you look at things on Instagram and you're just scrolling, but Parent with Science actually I pay attention to it.
Well, thank you. That's very nice to say.
It's just the truth. But tell me about kind of how that has gone. So you decide to pivot from instructing and you're going to help parents. So how long has Parent with Science been around now?
In year 4 and been through some iterations. And, initially I started just doing one-on-one work with other parents in a parent coaching way. And then gradually I've sort of moved to different audiences and I'm sort of on this precipice now. I'm continuing my parent coaching, but I'm moving all of my workshops sort of into this more digital format, which are going to be available shortly on all these things that we all struggle with as parents. I mean, that's really my lens. Whenever I am, putting together, my Instagram posts or thinking about some new videos to shoot, my lens is what questions do I have? What questions have I had? What questions am I getting from all of these parents that I'm working with in private sessions? Like, what are we struggling with? And then I also try to pay attention to sort of, the last year, in this pandemic has been really hard on parents and thinking about what are actionable things that we can all do that are easy that are going to make us better parents and are going to help our kids. Nobody's a perfect parent, and that is just a lie. But we can all make progress. And so I really try to look at things from the lens of how can we put information in people's hands who need it in a way that, doesn't make you feel like a failure, because I don't know very many parents who are failures. Everybody is doing a good job, but we could all do a better job is really what it comes down to.
I actually, what you just said truly resonates with me because as I was reading your book in preparation for our conversation, I think one thing that you are very good at is assuring us that we are doing okay, right? Because for me personally, there is not an hour that goes by that I'm like, whoa, I am messing my kids up in some way, some shape, some form. And while I learned from this book, I also found it to be reassuring.
Right. Well, and I think this is actually why I wrote this book, because what happens is, and I think it's happened a lot, especially as we've all been home more over the last year and a half, coming up on 2 years, I guess, is that we turned to Google. And there are some great resources online. And there are some terrible resources online. And even as somebody who works in this field, I see other things and I'm like, first of all, that's written in a way that is going to make people feel bad. And, people are writing these, say this to your child, not that, do this, don't do this, in a way that does not accurately represent the science. And it's written in a way that makes people feel bad. And I don't think we need to make parents feel any worse about the job they're doing. We're all worried about our kids. I mean, that's not a new idea. I mean, all parents have felt like that for all time. But I do think that parenting right now is more intense and it is harder to parse out what you should and should not do, which is why I wanted to put together this book, which is I will take 100 years of science and I will boil it down to 3 things. And if you do these 3 things, just chart your own course, follow your own roadmap as a parent, you decide whether or not it's organic, whether it's formula, whatever it is.
Yeah.
That's your choice. but you have to be the parent in control to kind of know the common denominator. Like, what do you have to do? And if you do those things, your kids are going to be fine and you're going to be happier.
And I think for me, so we're going to get into this book because this truly is such a gift. It's a gift for me as a mom, and I want to talk about it. And I kind of want this to be the focus of our conversation because I do think it distills down every single thing that I have worried about.
I'm glad.
100 pages. But
because parents are busy, right?
It's a very quick read, people. It's very quick and it's to the point, and it's
very good.
But it does provide a roadmap. So I do have some questions.
Hey everybody, John Gruss with Element Mortgage here again, and we're still dealing with a pretty crazy real estate market, especially on the lending side. Interest rates are still incredibly low. So if you have not had an opportunity to refinance your current home yet, what are you waiting for? Rates are great. Reach out to us. We'll be happy to provide you your options. Secondarily, our homes are all increasing in value. Great chance to potentially tap into some of that equity by utilizing a cash out refinance option. Again, the rates are still incredibly low on that, and you've got an opportunity to tap into the equity for either home improvements, maybe some debt consolidation, whatever that additional cash may be beneficial for. Last, if you're buying a home, you've probably seen the news. It's crazy out there. The market is hot. What's going to be incredibly important is that you have a lender that can help you navigate this process by explaining what's going on, how to strategically position your offer so that it's accepted in a market where sellers are getting multiple offers on properties. And at Element Mortgage, we're happy to do that. We're licensed in 49 states. Sorry, New York. Unfortunately, we're not able to assist, but please reach out to me, John, Jon.Gruss, Grus, at elementmortgage.com or 206-954-4787. John Gruss, NMLS number 1108421. Element Mortgage is a division of American Pacific Mortgage, NMLS number 1850, equal housing opportunity.
So you start what you just said, and it's the synopsis of your book is Dr. Kate distills 100 years of parenting research into 3 actionable strategies to help your families thrive. Right?
Yeah.
So they are real life solutions. You do break it down kind of into 3 categories. And I'm scrolling through notes here, by the way. I'm not checking my Instagram, just FYI. But your 3 strategies revolve around being loving and kind, structured and supportive, and being present, right? Those are the 3 things.
Yep.
Those sound very easy.
Mm-hmm.
And the way that you break them down, you're like, well, just be kind and take the time to care for yourself and be present. All of that is in theory really easy. But what I found myself wondering at the end is like, this is asking parents to have an incredible amount of emotional availability to their kids, which I struggle with a ton.
Tell me why you think that.
So I liked what you said about treating your kid like they are your favorite person in the world.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And really getting to know them and being able to parse out who they are versus who you want them to be. And that takes an incredible amount of self-awareness, of emotional work, I feel like, to separate out what you want for your kid versus who they are, right?
Right.
And so it's amazing advice, by the way. Like that is the goal. I find that to be very aspirational, but in practice, that's a difficult thing to accomplish. So I want you to talk about how, as parents, we get the emotional tools to be able to be these 3 things.
Yeah. So I think for me, when I think about what parents need in order to do these things is, and it's sort of circular, but the first thing is you gotta take care of yourself. And so, I always kind of use the mantra, self-care is childcare. A lot of times parents will pour too much of their emotions, too much of their identity into who their child is, what their child's doing. And they don't preserve any space for themselves. And I talk about this in the book, is that's unhealthy to pour your identity, to wrap your identity so much up into your child. That's where we end up with these, motorized parents. So these helicopter parents, snowplow parents.
This part cut a little close, Kate.
Yeah.
For me.
I would not call you a motorized parent.
I literally have the quote. I literally have this written in my notes. I think I'm a motorized mom. I have anxiety about my child.
That's normal. There's nothing wrong with having anxiety
while
about
we're
your
laughing
child.
about it, explain motorized mom.
Yeah. So basically, if you look at the way people talk about parenting, so we talk about parents as being, a helicopter parent. We talk about parents as being snowplow parents. So a helicopter parent is like hovering and never lets their kids do anything on their own. A snowplow parent like removes all the different barriers out of the way for their child. And they're really different names for the same problem, which is like an inability to let your child experience consequences and fail sometimes, right? It doesn't mean that you should be like rooting for your child to experience failure, but it means that we have to be comfortable with the uncomfortableness of letting our child experience failure.
Or suffering.
Or suffering.
Of any kind.
Or getting like not invited to the birthday party, like all those moments that, getting rejected when they ask somebody out to a dance. Like we know they're coming. You can't protect your kid from them, and you don't want to, because kids that are protected from those things, they show stunted psychological development. They do not transition well into adulthood. There is beauty in letting your child experience these opportunities to grow resilience, to grow perseverance, to grow in a way that allows them to sort of re-engage, step back up. And as parents, we can support them in that, but we don't want to remove every barrier from them in their life, right? So that's really what I talk about as a motorized parent, is like, let's just talk about it as a general phenomenon, because there's no real need to, break down, what's a snowflake versus a snowplow, or, it's like all these different names.
So it's a great categorization. There we go. But I saw myself in so much of this book. Truly, but that's one. Again, and so I thought,
nobody's perfect. That's the whole point, Shannon, is that there is no parent I know, and I put myself in this category, that is perfect. And so some of us follow more closely to this philosophy than others. For some people, it's going to be easier than for other people. So, I have friends who, I've given this workshop basically with these 3 ideas for years. And inevitably, there's like 2 people in the audience who are like trying to be A+ students. And these parents are like, I already do all these things. And I'm like, great, we'll do them more. Because the reality is that I know they're not perfect. I'm not perfect. Nobody is. And so the extent to which, we can hold up a mirror to how we're doing parenting, how we're approaching our family life, makes us better at it. So instead of, like, oh no, I have to potty train my kid, let me frantically go out and solve this one problem. Which is valuable, right? Your kid has to learn to poop and pee in a potty. Like, you do need support in that too. This is very different. This is, how do I find comfort being a modern parent? Like, what does the science say about what I should be doing? Let me have guidance there. It's not necessarily a guide for how to do one thing, but it's meant to make you think about your philosophy to do everything as a parent.
So touching on this, because I thought, I found this to be something that I'm like, my husband and I need to sit down and do this, because you talk about, and it's a little bit later in the book, but you talk about parenting to a set of values that you assign your family.
My family value cake.
And I really thought that was an incredible concept that I have never thought about before. And it gave me pause to think, like, what are my values? Because I value things you talk about, like routine is a big one for me. Sleep was huge in my value cake for a long time when the kids were little.
Oh yeah.
But as far as you talk about kindness being your value, and I think too, like, as I read that and really reflected on it, I really came up with a set of values that surprised me a little bit.
So what did you come up with out of curiosity? So
I think for me, routine and structure are really big for all of us, for me particularly, because I need that. I have anxiety that those things, what I can make predictable, I like doing that for my kids, and they seem to do really well with that. So routine and structure are really big for me. I realize that I think I value creativity a lot more than I thought, because I thought, okay, well, what am I encouraging my kids to do? There's like a DJ mixer behind you. There's all this art on the, so I'm like, I think that was a bigger value than I thought. And I absolutely parent to that. And probably like traditions.
Yeah. Family.
Yeah.
You value family, right?
I think those were my top three.
Yeah.
And
that's all you get. That's the whole point. Because so the whole idea of the family value cake is that right now I feel like there's this and in parenting. So it's like, you need to do this and that, school and athletics and kindness and competition or whatever it is, it's like parents are just feeling this additive nature. And the idea of the family value cake is that you take time with your co-parent or partner, whoever it is, and you decide what you actually care about. And I specifically say, you don't get more than 3 ingredients.
Yeah, that's it.
And that's all. You want everything in your family life to point to those things. If you want your kids to be creative, then you would set up family structure and rules and be supportive of things that are creative. It gives you permission to stop worrying about all this other stuff that other parents are doing because it's not your jam.
Well, and you talk about something else too, which is the pressure of modern parenting. And I definitely, I'm a type A person. I put that pressure on myself, and I absolutely see myself putting it on my kids. And reflecting on the fairness of that has also given me pause, right? Because people are hardwired to be a certain way. Like I was an achiever from the time I came out of the womb. Like it just has been a part of me. And I look back at myself in high school. My mom didn't parent me at all. I don't think any of our parents did.
It was the 80s. She was like, later.
Yeah, bye. I'm like, I asked her this summer, I'm like, Mom, what were you actually doing when you had 3 kids? Like, what
she was like reading a book. Like, she wasn't
totally.
worried
She's
about
like,
it.
I don't know.
Yeah. But that independence allowed you to become who you are.
Yeah.
Right?
But I'm hardwired that way. So I wanted
that's just who you are
to be really good at school. I was just such a obsessive little nerd. Like I just loved it. I mean, every award I could get, I wanted. And nobody can teach you that, right? Like nobody can teach you that. Nobody can parent that into you. So when you have a kid that is not that way, realizing that and having the emotional availability to say, okay, well, that was me.
Yeah.
Well, but that might not be you is a tough thing.
It's really tough
to do. But coming back to that value cake is mission critical. And I truly don't think that I really realized that until I put 2 and 2 together after I read this.
I think that it's really easy to feel these modern parenting stressors to try to do it all. And we cannot do it all. And so the extent to which you can give yourself freedom, like these are the 2, maybe 3 things that I really want for my kids. Just gives you permission to focus on those things, and it allows you to shut out a lot of the noise. Back to your comment about like seeing your kids for who they are. One of my favorite ways ever to think about parenting is the idea of parents as gardeners. And so there's this great book by Allison Gopnik from a few years ago, but it basically elaborates on this idea of there are multiple philosophies of how to be a parent. So the one is like a carpenter. So I am building my child into a very specific thing, and this is the idea of the like Yale lacrosse player. Like I am building this machine to only do that. And that lens really puts itself towards, motorized parenting, being very involved in your child's life because you have a very specific thing you're trying to build. Versus the idea of being a gardener parent, which is a much better approach psychologically for your child and for you. And it's the idea of, I'm going to plant a lot of seeds and I'm going to water them and I'm going to take care of them. I'm going to give my kids any experience that they want and some they don't want, just so they can try it. Instead, they check that off their list. And I have no idea what's going to come from it, but I'm ready to watch my garden grow, and I'm ready to let my child declare themselves in their own life. You will raise a more creative, happier child by letting them explore lots of different things and develop their own passions. Now, having said that, you can't do that too much, right? Like, they got to learn how to swim.
Yeah.
That's like a basic, so there's some lines you have to hold as a parent. That's not incompatible with also allowing your child to explore and expose them to lots of different things. And it's not easy, when you find out you're having a child or when a child comes into your life, you can't help but to imagine a certain future for them. And maybe it will conform with what you're getting, and it might not. But at the end of the day, your job is to be their biggest support, somebody for them to fall back onto and to help them get where it is they want to go. I mean, it's their life that we are a part of, and we're trying to raise them in a way that they become thriving, successful human beings.
So let's talk a little bit about the science, because I feel like you do give great permission to parents in this book and saying you are allowed to have your own set of values. You are allowed to turn off Instagram, and because I find
except for my posts.
Except for Parent with Science.
Yeah, Parent with Science. Keep
you
that.
allow those. But I feel like, even social media is polarizing, where you're either like a type A tiger mom or you're a shitty mom.
Oh, absolutely.
And I think there's kind of no in between. I think, and there are a few, there are a few accounts out there. I mean, there are a lot of accounts out there that are kind of like, hey, we're trying, but we're not perfect. But by and large, it seems like there are kind of two groups. You're either like a silly drinking, swearing mom, or you're, a total put together soccer mom. Those are like the two stereotypes.
Yeah.
But let's talk.
Which sucks, because
it sucks.
And then where do the rest of us go?
To each other.
Well, no, I hope. But it's like it's like, I want to build the community where all parents are welcome, because there are plenty of tiger soccer moms. Is that even a thing?
I don't know.
I don't know. I feel like I'm just putting words together, but that are good parents.
Yeah.
And there are, messy parents whose kids are always late to school that are good parents too, So let's talk about scientifically, because there are a couple things that you say like, no, but for reals, don't do these things. Yeah. Yeah.
And these are things I needed to hear. I don't hit my kids, because the two things that you talk about are no yelling and no hitting.
You can, some caveats on yelling, but yes, yelling and hitting should not be done. So this cuts deep. Well, okay. So here's the thing. Here's the thing with yelling. So everybody, come on, Shannon. I shouldn't yell at my kids.
No, I do.
But nobody ever gives you a strategy. It's just like, don't do that. But it's like, well, what the heck else are you supposed to do?
So this summer, we have had a lot of family time.
Yeah.
And before we had this interview scheduled, I think it was honestly like 2 days before you sent me a copy of this book, I called a family meeting. And which the kids love, by the way. Like, oh, great. Can we have it on your bed? You're like, sure.
First of all, I don't know what's going to happen in this family meeting, but I would just say that is excellent parenting, is to say, we got to figure something out, and you get everybody together.
So
that's great.
I had to round it, because this is a family problem.
Yeah. Then should be a family solution.
Where I'm like, okay, I don't like the way that I feel after I yell at you guys.
Mm-hmm.
And we had a rough morning, and there was yelling. I was yelling. My son is yelling. My husband comes home from work, and it's just like a lot of yelling. And I'm like, I don't like the way I feel. I go into a shame spiral because I feel bad, and I'm the grown up, and I should be able to manage my frustration to a better level. Son, we need to figure out how you can actually tell me how you're feeling, because your feelings are valid behind the reason why you're yelling. But this is just not going to work. And so I said, I feel like the ground rule that I need for me is that when I say I need 5 minutes, that is your signal for you and your sister, and they're 10 and 6, to know that I am trying to not yell at you right now. And I need you to respect that.
Yeah, no, that's brilliant. I mean, that's that's the parent timeout. Parents need a timeout. And for you to label that is really good, you know, and I like to call it timeout because all kids know what a timeout is, right? So if you're like, I need 5 minutes alone, like you might be going to scroll Instagram in the bathroom, you know, versus saying, mom needs a timeout. Then you are actually labeling that you need an emotional break, which is what your kids know. That's what a timeout is,
right?
You know, so it's like labeling it that is like everybody knows exactly what that means.
So I have definitely, I get to a point where I get so frustrated that I explode for sure. So I'm reading the no yelling and I'm like, oh my God. We had just had this conversation as a family, and I have been trying, like putting more effort into this one area of parenting than I have in a long time, because I know how damaging it is. And I don't want my kids to not want to hang out with me or not feel safe or all of those things.
Yeah. So, I mean,
but help me, Kate.
Look, so, okay. I have so many thoughts. This is, I think, really common. I mean, it honestly is.
Yeah.
We all struggle with the yelling thing. So, you know, just knowing like I shouldn't yell is like one thing, but there are times when yelling is totally appropriate. And I want to start with that. You should always yell if it's a safety issue. The reason why scientifically you don't want to yell the rest of the time is because you are creating a dynamic where your child is going to start yelling back at you. And if you were already aroused and yelling at your kid, and then your kid starts yelling back at you, you're doubling down on whatever negative emotions got you into that spot. So our best option is to put strategies in place so that we don't escalate to that. So the first one, brilliant. You already came up with this idea, but I'll take some scientific credit for it, is mom timeout.
Well, it's not a new idea.
Timeout. Yeah. It's like put yourself in timeout. Take a break. Self-care is childcare, right? So that's like definitely like a big strategy. The other thing that I always tell parents is there's this 3-word phrase, and it's very powerful. No, thank you. Always start these conversations with your kids, like, you know, when they're not putting on their shoes, when they're supposed to be doing whatever, when they're annoying you because they're jumping on the couch for the meal, whatever it is, you know, with no, thank you. And there's a reason for that. It is almost impossible to yell no, thank you in a negative, loud voice. Just like the nature of saying no, thank you. It's like, it slows you down and it gives you a moment to realize where you are about to go. Right. So if you start with get in the habit of like, no, thank you. And, you know, it works great with toddlers and it works great with older kids too, even teenagers, just to say, no, thank you. I don't like how you're talking back to me. You get that pause instead of escalating into a yelling argument. Right. And then the other thing is that sometimes, you know, kids vary in the degree of this, but it's hard to hear when somebody's yelling at you. It's really stimulating. It's overwhelming. I mean, think about that college roommate you had who like came in and screamed at you. Like it didn't feel good. It was overwhelming. You couldn't even really process, you know, you come up with a comeback to that person like 6 hours later, right? When you're finally in like an emotionally cool state, right? I mean, that's what happens, right? So if you have something you really want to say to your kid, don't yell, walk up to them, gently touch them, and whisper what it is that you want to communicate. Because when you whisper to somebody, what do? It's like you're getting invited to a club. You know, like you lean in, you want to hear the secret. You want to know what they're saying to you. You have to pay greater attention and greater focus to hear what somebody is whispering to you. It is a much more powerful way to communicate with your child that you don't like something that's going on right there. Okay. And you can even imagine combining those strategies. Okay. So, you know, your 12-year-old is making you nuts and you are ready to blow. Walking up, gently touching them on the shoulder and saying, no, thank you. I need a break. I'm going on timeout. We're going to talk about this later. Okay. But the power of sort of putting together those 3 different options actually gives you a strategy for what to do, because this is a good example is that, if you scroll through, any parenting blog or Instagram or all of these things, they just say, don't yell at your child. Well, great. Well, what do you do instead? Like help people.
Yeah.
Like give them a strategy, give them help. And so I always say like, start with no, thank you. It sounds so silly, but I promise it really changes the dynamic because it's so polite sounding.
It is polite sounding. And I will say that I have been making an effort to go into the whisper touch, which by the way, you can still angry whisper.
Oh, you can totally angry whisper. Like, stop doing that, please.
And I asked my son the other day.
I totally angry whisper.
I actually asked him this morning because you also say as a strategy in your book that you're allowed to say, it feels like you're doing this to annoy me.
Oh, yeah. Why not?
Right? Is that
have a conversation?
So my son he does this thing at breakfast where he kicks the bottom of his stool.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
And sometimes and my husband insists he's not doing it on purpose. I'm like, oh, he's doing it on purpose. Like 100%. So he was doing it this morning. We're all having breakfast. And I just turned to him. I'm like, I feel like you're doing this to annoy me right now. And he gets this little smile and he's like, I was. And my husband looks at him and he's like, do you always do it to annoy your mom? And he was like, not always, but definitely sometimes.
But look, that is brilliant. This is why that's brilliant. You had a conversation about it. Now imagine if you had gone into that and been like, you're trying to make me mad. You know what I mean? Like that was going to blow up from there, right?
Totally.
Because like yelling means yelling, but like just saying like, hey, is that what's going on here?
Yeah.
And him being like, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean,
hard yes.
That's great.
So what do you, because I love, and I will say, I am actively trying to put some of these strategies in practice because they really are effective. And I do feel like they provide more of a roadmap than saying just like, be loving.
Do better.
Like, what does that mean?
Please. I know.
So what do you do though when your kid doesn't respond to this? Because I have firsthand experience with a kid who has a very time calming down and who really like timeout, he won't go.
Yeah.
Right? Like he has to stay in that agitated state. We had an incident here with some friends and he just lost his marbles and I whisper touched and I was like, I need a break. And I think you need a break. And I think you need to go to your room for 5 minutes. And he's like, no. And so he finally went up. After I was like, you can make a choice right now to lose your DJ stuff.
Yeah.
Or to go to your room and take some time. And so he chose to go to his room, but he came back down 2 minutes later, still just like raring to go. So what do you do when you are following these strategies?
Yeah.
But your child can't calm down?
Yeah. So look, I mean, mountains are different sizes for different people. I mean, I say that like I'm not saying that in I actually mean it in a compassionate way. Is that in that moment, which it sounds like there were other people here, it was like a really activating moment. There was like cool technology involved. I mean, any one of those things, maybe that the skills would have been there for that to be successful, right? But when you add up all of those things, all of a sudden it's like Everest.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Like it was so big. It wasn't just like, oh, like one of these things is happening. It's like, it's social, it's new, it's, whatever it was like, and then like all of a sudden like mom's up in your face, and so that's like a lot all at once. Many kids wouldn't navigate that well, right? Because that's so reactive, so big. 2 minutes is just not going to do it. And so I think there's other strategies that could work in situations like that. If you can see it climbing and escalating. The first one would be, how can I change the dynamic that's happening right now? Is there a way that I can calm this down or soothe this? Can I just gently remove some of the stimulation in some way? Like, right. So sometimes if you can't get your child to leave this situation, you can alter the situation itself. So maybe you take like, I don't know, I'm imagining a situation where there's like 15 kids. Maybe you peel off 12 of those kids to go do something special with you. so that your child is in a much calmer environment, right? You're not removing your kid from the environment, but you are changing the environment in a way that's putting your kid in a situation where they have a better chance to climb the mountain because it's gotten a lot smaller. Do you know what I mean? Like, so it makes a lot of sense when you think about a 15-year-old, like how you're getting a 15-year-old to go into timeout if they don't want to.
Right.
Right. So your only option then, and I talk about this in the book, is to change the environment. How can you change it to provide a better opportunity for them to calm down? And, you know, a textbook example would be everybody else goes on timeout away from the storming teenager, right? So in that situation, another alternative would have been, hey, the majority of us are going to go inside and start this thing. I want you to stay here and do this little task, and you come in a few minutes. You know, and so you're just changing the dynamic where you're giving that kid a moment to calm down by removing other sorts of stimulation. Does that make sense?
It does. And I think in theory, like I understand that would work, but when you have like a raging kid,
it's really hard.
Who needs to stay in that as a release valve.
Yeah.
Right. And so who follows people around.
Yeah. So
to get that response.
Right. And so knowing that, right. So knowing that, so this is actually, I think, a common issue is that, and you see this with many children in that their feelings are really big and they're overwhelming, and it's hard to it's not even taking control. It's hard to experience them.
I think that's what it is too.
It's the uncomfort of experiencing it.
Well, and the lack of control that we have as parents. Like we have all seen kids have these huge tantrums, and the parent has no idea what to do.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think, so this is an example of something that people do that makes parents feel bad, is that there are all these philosophies of how you're supposed to deal with these big emotional outbursts. And so there's the people who, you know, are like timeouts are the way to go. And then there's the other people who are like timeouts are mean. And so you need to do time ins. Okay. And so this is an example of this like bifurcation, you know, and it's like you get to be in camp A or camp B, and it's like you can't be in both. Both work. And to say that only one works is misleading. Scientifically, they both work, but they're useful in different times and they're useful in different places. So if your kid is having a meltdown because they want something and they can't have it, your job is to let them just experience that feeling. Like if you've explained nicely and there's a rational reason why they can't have something, then they just need to have that feeling. You
don't need to motorize through it.
Yeah, just let them feel it. Just be with them and be like, I'm sorry. You know, this is where parents run into problems sometimes. And you see this all the time. And my heart hurts because I know these parents are trying to do their best thing, but they just keep saying, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. No, it's okay. But, you know, they just keep talking. And it's like, just stop and let your kid feel the feels. It's like when you think about, you know, yourself, when you had like your first big breakup, and somebody just kept saying like, it's okay, you'll forget about it. Don't, you know, blah, blah, blah. And didn't you just want to be like, stop talking to me? Right. You talking to me is creating more stimulation and it's making me more upset. And now I'm ugly crying on top of how I was crying before. Right.
Yeah.
And so
I just need to marinate.
I know. It's like, you got to have your feelings, you know, you gotta have that experience. And so it's totally possible that in that moment, that kid just needs to have their feels. And you don't want to shut down your kid's feelings. You want them to be able to feel comfortable experiencing them.
And just not screaming at their friends.
Yeah, well, you know, that's ideal. They don't do that. But that's what I think is hard, is that a lot of parents feel guilt because they're like, oh, I wasn't supposed to do that. Oh, I was supposed to follow this other thing because now I've ruined my kids for life.
Yeah,
because I did something.
100.
And that's like literally what the science says is not true. Like if you yell, sometimes that's okay, as long as you work on doing better. If you sometimes deal with a tantrum in a way that really didn't go well, that's okay. Like do better. And that's sort of my whole point of like, be present, like apologize. like look back on the situation and realize like, what did I do good? What didn't do good? And when everybody's calm, if the child's old enough, like have a conversation about it.
Well, I think it's about more than anything. And I think about this in my own life too, because anybody that listens to this podcast knows that I am a late bloomer a little bit, but you have to increase your skills as a parent. And like, you know, my son just turned 10 and the tween thing is
very real,
new.
Yeah.
And it's real.
Oh, it's fun though.
And I don't know what's going on. And there's a part of me that's like, can we just end this phase? Because this is so new and so big and I have no idea what I'm doing.
No, you don't want to do that.
But it is about growing with your kid and figuring out the new phase. And I think you get so, you know, now I feel like with my own kids, like I'm pretty good in the 0 to like 7 category, right? Because their problems are understandable and their reactions are understandable.
You've also had 7 years of practice at that, but you know what I mean?
100%.
Like, so when you move into new territory and your child is at the same time moving into a new body, it is, and there's a whole different role shift that happens then. It's big.
It's big and it feels big. It feels big to me. It feels big. And I know it feels big to the kids that are going through it. It did, you know, to me when I was that age, but you only have that perspective looking back. But I think it's like, for myself, I think I have gotten comfortable. And now that my child is growing up, you're like, oh man, I got to stay on it and continue growing and learning. And I think sometimes my hope is that when I screw up, calling a family meeting or saying like, I handled that super bad.
That's exactly what that's exactly right.
I have regrets.
Exactly right.
And so coming back and having that conversation and then trying, but reflecting on the value cake really clarified for me, like
what you actually care about,
what I actually care about.
And it gives you permission to not care about other things. I mean, when it really comes down to it, you know, the reparations or like the apology when you make a mistake is really important for 2 reasons. One, it makes you feel better, but also you're actually modeling to your kid what to do when they make a mistake. Because here's the deal. As a family unit, you see this a lot with siblings, right? They can be nasty as heck to each other. But when they wake up the next morning, guess what? That's still your brother or your sister. It is an opportunity to make big mistakes with consequences, but things that can be repaired because you are family. Like that's something that's always true about you, right? They need to practice it here and you need to practice it here because when they go out with a friend, they can't mess that up. They will lose that friend for forever. Right. Yeah. And so it's really, you know, these, you know, what some people call failures are really just opportunities for us to all do a better job. Our kids and ourselves.
Yeah. And that, I mean, I am really grateful that you wrote this book.
Oh, well, thank you.
because I did read it. And I also, you know, I also realized reading it, what a place of privilege I am reading it from, because a lot of these things require support. And it is much easier to be a relaxed mom when you have a partner who is, you know, parenting with you, when you have, you know, when you have resources to do self-care, when you have all of those things contribute to relaxed parenting. But I do think these principles can extend across the board to any parent, actually, mom or not.
Exactly. No, it's very much written for my fellow moms, because I do think moms, we tend to get shamed more than dads do, you know.
Well, there's so much
other parents,
guilt,
you know, and not to just think of it in that, you know, very binary way. But.
And I feel like something you talk about closer to the end of the book is the pressure that's on modern moms, and also the horrifying statistic that we are with our person.
I know.
Like we are with our children, 75% more than stay-at-home moms were?
Yeah, it's basically speaks to, I think, the intensity. People spend more time now playing with their kids than they did when everybody stayed at home with their kids. It's mind-blowing.
It's actually mind-blowing. And I think during COVID too, one thing that I I have realized about myself is that the minutia of decisions that we've started making, can my kid do a play date? Do they need to wear a mask? Or is this, and the constant risk assessment has exhausted me to a level that I did not know was possible.
No, you mean you lose the forest through the trees, right?
Yes, 100%.
Because you're so focused on these micro choices that we're making every day, that sometimes it's hard to remember the big picture, It's interesting right now. I think a lot of families are struggling in really novel ways because of the pandemic. A lot of kids are really struggling. We're seeing huge increases in mental health problems, anxiety, depression, self-injurious behavior. It's a really concerning moment where families need support. And there's a risk assessment that goes into how much support you can actually activate, right? Do you let people come into your house to help you do childcare? Do you send your child to school if you don't agree, if you're concerned about health, or if you're concerned about the policies at school? It's a really isolating moment in time because, we've talked for a long time about how the migration of the modern family means that your parents are no longer next door. You don't have a village. How do you build a village? There's there's been a long sociological discussion about that, right? But now we're laying on top of that diaspora of movement, right? This layer of okay, well, maybe my mom's next door, but I can't have my mom come over for whatever the reason is, And so it's very isolating.
I think it's been more isolating this year than it was when I had a newborn. And you kind of, there are different kinds of people that do well or don't do well in isolation. I am a person that does not do well.
You're a clear extrovert. But, I will say that there are certainly circumstances where for some kids, school has been a really big set off or trigger in terms of emotional or behavioral problems. And so this has actually been a very positive year for those kids. I'm no less worried about their social development or other things. I mean, there's a diversity of experiences, but on the whole, I think what is being asked of families and moms and dads is extraordinary right now. And so to not name that as the really big elephant in the room really does a disservice to what parents are navigating right now.
I think the words relaxed do not describe my parenting style over the course of the last 18 months. And I think it's exactly what you said, the forest for the trees, and emotional capacity where you're, as parents, you're trying to deal with the adjustment of being at home, trying to work. Your kids it's so much mentally to handle.
It's a lot, which is why I think that it's especially freeing to kind of go back to that family value cake, right? Screen time is a great example. 2 years ago, I know lots of families, and I've talked about this a lot, parents who had, we do 30 minutes of media a day. That's what the American Academy of Pediatrics recommend. Whatever it was, people had their very strict philosophies on these things. Flash forward a couple of years, parents have let that go a lot. For reasons that are not bad. I know a lot of kids had an early entry into online gaming over the past year, which is, again, a privileged thing, Wi-Fi, access to a device, all those things. But it allowed for social connection when children had to be home and alone. And again, huge regional variations in that, right? So we live in Washington State. We were an early kids stay home from school state. Public school kids in our state are just went back to school this week. Or at least in the Seattle area, for the first time in a year and a half, full time. Those kids have had a wild ride, right? My friends in other parts of the country, Florida, Pennsylvania, up and down the East Coast, it varies so much state to state what the experience of a child has been.
100% true. I mean, we know people in Arizona who are it's been a blip on our radar, but it really actually hasn't affected our lives that much.
Totally.
And you're right. Here in Washington, it has been, and not in all of Washington.
Exactly. It's a region. That's what I'm saying. There's regional variety.
Not in all of Washington, but it has been really intense here in our region.
Yeah. I actually remember having a really surreal this would have been last summer when, you know, we really didn't know what was going to happen. And I believe strongly in school for social emotional development, academic development and whatnot. I had this really weird conversation with my partner about if the schools here don't open, where can we rent an apartment? We both can work mobily.
Yep.
Where can we rent an apartment that our kids will actually get to go to school? Which is like such a bizarre conversation. But you think about this, it's like, we always talk about like vote with your feet, right? In terms of like, what experiences do you want for your children? And then that's sort of like a layer on top of that in the pandemic, right? On top
100%.
of everything else.
Yeah. And I think the pandemic is so polarizing also. So you're dealing with incredible guilt as a parent, a short fuse, being isolated, not being able to necessarily maintain the same rituals. And then trying, either you do what I do, which is you go overboard trying to create new ones. And then you're like, well, I'll just do them for the whole neighborhood.
Yeah.
Or you just kind of hunker down because you're working full time and you have nothing more to give.
Well, and I think too, it has become another point of judgment against other parents. So we are all making different risk assessments. And if a parent makes a very different choice than you, it becomes very easy to be negative about that other person, to be negative about how they're running their family life. When really, let's have some compassion and grace for other parents.
And I think a part of it too is
that's true on the playground in or outside of a pandemic.
Yeah.
You know?
And I think I just read an article about compassion fatigue.
Yeah. Oh, I read the same article.
And I walked away from my computer and I was like, oh my God, I have that.
It's hard.
Yeah. And so, you're dealing with being short, feeling like the pandemic was going to be over for a month and then realizing like, oh my God, it's like super not. So we're still in this and we're still in Washington State. And then, ICUs are being overrun and your kids are going back to school and all of this, it's just a mountain. Like you said, it's a Mount Everest of unknowns, plus kind of having trouble feeling sorry for people still. It's a tough thing. I put my son to bed the other night and he told me about a family that had pulled their kid out of his school and they were putting him in totally online school because they were really scared about the Delta variant. And my son was kind of incredulous about it. And I just said like, look, we don't know what's going on in their house. I feel really sad for this kid, but that's their choice to make.
Well, that's exactly what the courtesy we should give to other parents, and other families. Like you don't know.
You have no clue
what's happening, right?
You have no clue.
And the other thing that I think we know is that there is a wide range of parenting choices and they all work for certain kids. And so what you are doing in your own life as a parent with your own values and whatnot might work great for your kids. But if you took that entire system and put it in a different household, it might not work. And so there is a degree of flexibility that needs to come with how we approach our own parenting. What other people are doing might not work for you. So stop comparing yourself. And also don't expect other people to do what you do because it might not work for their kids, whatever their kids are. And I think, I talk about this at the end of the book is the idea of like, and you talked about it briefly earlier, is see your kid for who they are. And it's like we have the pop quiz in there. It's like, do you really know your kid?
Okay. I'm gonna put that pop quiz. So let's talk about that because it was really interesting. I'm sitting here with Tracy Erickson of the Collective Group at Compass. Tracy, you are a great listing agent. I've seen a lot of homes that are listed by the Collective Group. Can you tell me a little bit about what's in your listing plan and how it sets the Collective Group apart from other agents?
Absolutely. Shannon, there's so much more that goes into selling a home than just putting a sign in the front yard. And we really pride ourselves on that. One of the first things we'll do is walk through the home with the seller and advise on the best improvements. And then once we decide what type of work that we're going to do to give you the best ROI, you can hand those keys over and we will project manage the entire thing. Once we have your home looking its best, we will get it staged from top to bottom and have our amazing photographers come in and not only take photographs, but also do videos, drone shots, and even a Matterport. Once that's completed and we have it on the market, the marketing is huge. So we push social media advertising very hard. Our goal is always to achieve 10,000 views of your property on all social media platforms. So our commitment is always to our sellers in this hot Seattle market to get the highest dollar possible for their biggest investment.
Tracy, where can people find you?
They can find us at compass.com, or they can find us on Instagram, Tracy Erickson Homes, or feel free to give me a call, 206-251-6351.
So you have a pop quiz in the book where you ask basic questions about your child.
Are they basic?
Well, I'm a stay-at-home mom that talks to my kids a lot. So for me, it was really basic, but I understand how, as somebody who's not, quantity of time is a big deal for answering these particular questions you ask. And so for me, it was easy because I know, and I volunteer and I'm in there.
Okay. I disagree. The quantity of time is the metric here, though.
You're right.
Because if I gave that list of questions to you about your best friend, could you answer everything?
Not everything. Here, I need to find, let me find it.
It's at the beginning of the Be Present chapter. But it's basically a list of information about your kid. Like, what do they like? What do they not like?
Oh yeah, here we go.
You should be able to answer these questions about anybody who you care about. I mean, maybe not teachers.
My child is best friends with. The name of my child's best friend's parents are. My child's teacher is. My child's coach for their extracurricular is. It's all questions like that.
Yeah.
Their likes and dislikes. My child's favorite celebrity, musician, sports star. My child's favorite free time activity. All of those basic. I thought that was a fascinating quiz.
Well, I think you would be surprised how many people forget to ask their kids what they like. It's a hard, we're so busy like keeping them fed and watered and like reasonably moral that sometimes we forget. Like,
it's a scale.
It's a scale. Sometimes we forget, like, hey, what's your favorite show right now?
Yeah.
Who are you listening to? Like, please don't let it be Perry Grip. Like,
I mean, it's a lot of Tiesto in our house right now.
Oh, my kids are really, I can't even, what's the name of this band? Is it like, this is so bad. See, look, I'm failing my own quiz.
I know, you need to take the quiz.
Well, okay, so my one kid is like obsessed with AC/DC. The other one, it's just like, I mean, it's like this mid-level, and it's like Atlas,
I think that's a band.
The Score. No, it's the Score. It's the Score.
The Score, okay.
They're super into the Score.
Well, I need to bust out some Score. I don't think we know that in our house.
It's personal preference.
Turn it on.
It's a
Dr. Kate's kids listen. We're gonna put it on the playlist.
I know. I think I can get like free tickets or like blow my kids' mind.
Yeah,
we're going to see the Score. So
at the Score, you'll be added in this Twitter post.
That'd be great. Yeah.
Well, Kate, thank you so much for coming on. And
my pleasure. It's always fun I love talking about parenting. I love working with parents.
That's why everybody should follow Parent with Science. And I think more than anything, Kate, your work is validating different types of parenting. The thing that I love about this is the thesis statement is you're doing a great job.
Everybody is trying really hard. We can just all improve ourselves.
It's true. And I think it's the constant quest for improvement, but offering tools that practically will get you through the challenges. And I'm going to put a link to your website and I'm going to put a link to your book. But again, it's How to Be a Relaxed Mom, the 3 secrets to avoid modern mom stress and raise great kids. This book doesn't say how to be the perfect mom, right? There's
impossible.
And it is about how to get yourself into a better headspace. And I know for me, like I said, guys, it's a quick read. And you wrote it that way. But for me to really reflect on the values I want in my house and how I am going to help nurture that was incredibly helpful.
I'm glad.
And I definitely took from it. I definitely grew from it. I'm still 100% going to call you crying. That's probably a few times in the next few months.
You gotta have your people.
But your insights are so good, and your lack of judgment and your support of all parents shines through this book. And that is what I think I appreciate the absolute most, is that is a non-judgmental take, very validating. And here are some tools that are going to help you relax and at least feel like you are taking steps toward parenting towards your values, which is at the end of the day, the goal for me personally, but it's outlined beautifully in the book. And thank you for writing it during a pandemic.
You're welcome.
Again, Parent with Science, follow Kate on Instagram, follow Dr. Kate on Instagram, find her website. I will publish it all in my show notes. And please engage with her on Instagram and ask all the questions and let her expertise.
Yeah, I love talking to people.
Yeah. Let her expertise help you as much as it has me. So, I think you're awesome.
Oh, I think you're awesome. I just wanted to say, you had said something about how you're moving into this new parenting phase.
Yes.
And it can feel really scary and overwhelming, right? It's like when you bring home a newborn, if you brought home a newborn or whenever age you got your kid, but whenever you bring them home, it's like, they're alive and I'm responsible for them. So I taught adolescent development for, a decade, right? An entire class on just teenagers. And I would always say on the first day of class, I am going to spend this entire class unteaching everything that you think you know about adolescence. And I'm going to maybe get in like 1 week of actual new information into you, because there's so much misinformation about the genre. People thinking that, kids hate their parents, or that it's like the worst part. And that's really not true at all. The actual science about adolescent development is that it is one of the most enriching moments in a parent-child dynamic. You can have a wonderful relationship with your kid across adolescence. You can build clear foundations into sort of what your adult relationship is going to look at. But what I really want to communicate is that it is this incredible moment of transformation for your kid where really awesome things happen. And they are developing the identity that they're going to carry with them for the rest of their life. Like, don't you want a front row seat to that? Watching who this kid's going to be. They are experiencing things that they have never experienced before. They're getting independence to go out and have all these amazing, cool social experiences. And you want to be there for that. You really want to be a part of your kid's life during that moment. And then the other thing that is incredible is that all of the physiological changes, the pubertal changes, the dopamine, the serotonin, all of the brain reorganization really boils down to this. This is the most plastic part of your child's life. This is the moment when they are most easily shaped by their surroundings at any other point outside of the toddler years. This is literally your last chance to impart what it is you want them to grow up with, the values, their skills, their belief in yourself. This is like your last chance to do that. Because once we get out of the adolescent phase, it's like downhill from there in terms of brain development, right? So, so many people think like, oh no, my kid's more negative, or they're more emotional, or they're pushing back on me. Yes, they are trying to create their own space in this world. It's a wonderful thing that you get to observe and to be there for and to support them for. But this is also your last chance to really try to shape this person. And not really shape, because, you can't mold them, but you can guide them. And it's the moment when you are finally taking off the training wheels and when you are moving from the driver's seat into the passenger seat. And I know it's a huge moment. I know it's a huge change from a parenting lens, but you got to show up. You got to show up.
No matter how much they try to shove you.
Oh, they're going to be so annoying sometimes. Yeah, but you just gotta love them, even though that's happening. You still got to find a way to show them love. You still got to find a way to bring structure and value into the life. And you still have to be present. You still got to know They're not always
You still got to take that pop quiz.
You still got to take the pop quiz. You still have to find ways to connect with them, although it's going to look really different than it did when they were 2 and you were building block towers, you know? But people are really afraid of that moment of becoming a parent to a teen. And I just really, I feel really strongly about it. This is a moment to be empowered and to double down on parenting. This is like your last best chance to do this. And so you just really got to be there.
I think that is a really good reminder, because I think like all the things we read as parents are like, your child is morally formed by age 5, right? Like that's something I read.
It's silly.
That's something I read in a parenting book one time. I'm like, Jesus Christ, that is a lot of pressure. Like, Lord help me. I don't know if I can.
I mean, moral development technically can't be fully codified until abstract reasoning comes along, which happens in the adolescent years. So.
Well, we need a whole other podcast about this, because I think this is an area, Kate, where it's like,
I think that there's a lot of misinformation out there. Like that statement made you feel bad, and parents don't need to feel bad. We already feel bad enough.
I feel bad enough. I feel like
my goal. My goal is to empower parents.
Yeah. And I feel like too, on the parenting scale, I'm like probably a solid like 4 or 5 out of 10, right? Like half the time I hit it out of the park, half the time I'm in a guilt spiral, right?
I would say then, I mean, I was going to make a really nerdy math joke. I'm not going to do it.
Do it.
So
do it. I want it.
I was going to say like, you know, maybe your average is 7, but you have a big standard deviation.
Oh, it's true.
Yeah.
Maybe.
But we all have standard deviations.
We do. And there's nobody who's crushing it all the time, because we are human beings who are all trying to figure it out.
I get asked this all the time. People are like, are you perfect at home? And I'm like, do you want to talk to my kids? Because they'll tell you when I fail. But that's good. I mean, that's good family life, right?
I think being honest about being human can't hurt.
It doesn't hurt. And actually what's great is that it's gotten to the point in my family, where my kids will put me on timeout. Like if I'm like really stressed out and I'm coming in, you know, hot and I'm running around and I'm like, we're late because we're always late. My kids will be like, hey mom, do you need to go take a break? And I'm like, you're right. Like if they're labeling it in me, just like I help label it in them, right? Like, whoa, temperature's getting hot. You know, let's bring it down a notch. That's great.
Those conversations though are so, we don't have those conversations in our house yet. I'll maintain a growth mindset. But we haven't even talked about the emotional thermostat in the house, which I thought was such an amazing analogy. But it's about helping your kids lower their temperature. But in order to do that, you need to lower your own temperature first.
Well, I think, yeah. So the idea is basically, every house has an emotional thermostat. Some houses run hot, where there's lots of yelling.
I think my house is warm.
You're warm. Okay.
I mean, Tori labeled it as cozy.
It is cozy.
So I feel like it's like warmth on the right side of the scale.
It's snuggly.
That's what I'm going to tell myself.
But then, you know, other houses are like cold and like, there's no emotion. It's not loving. You know, it feels very different. I mean, and we're shooting for like an average temperature, right? Mm-hmm. We want lots of warmth. We want it to be a fun place to be, but we don't want it to be hot. We don't want there to be like yelling and emotional outbursts and whatnot. And every home has a temperature. I mean, you like when you hear that analogy, you're like, yes. Like think about people's houses that you walk into. You can tell what type of a house it is, just from the way that people are when they're in there. And if you are creating an emotional temperature in your home that is either too hot or too cold, your kids aren't going to want to be there anymore. And that's a huge problem, because it means that you are going to have this deteriorating family relationship. You're not going to have the quality that's happening in terms of your connections with each other is not going to be there. And more importantly, when you reach the teen years, they're not going to want to be there. And you want to have the home where all the teenagers want to hang out so you can supervise and spy on them, but also giving them privacy. But, you know.
Right. There's a reason why we didn't put a door on the staircase.
Just in case.
It's easy to peek down. They forget they're grown-ups here.
That's hilarious.
It's true.
But it's smart. It is smart.
It's true. I gotta have ears. I gotta have ears on.
My mother-in-law, this is like so 90s, but all the kids would always go hang out at my husband and my mother at their house. And it was because they had like some old second fridge. They got like I don't even know. They had this fridge looked like it was from like the 60s. And like it was still there when I was like dating Kevin as like a young adult. But it was always 100% stocked with beverages and delicious snacks, no questions asked. So all of these teen boys, where would they go? Hang out in the basement snacks. With a snack. I mean, it was so brilliant. And so I'm like, I'm already thinking like, where can I pick up a mini fridge at like a garage sale?
Yeah.
I need to park that in the basement.
Goes right there. Yeah. It's the Barbie van.
Wait, I'm actually looking. It's actually already built out for this.
Yeah, it's built out. No, we just have to, hilarious. The Barbie van is going to find a new home and the mini fridge goes right there.
Maybe we could put some drinks in the back. It could be a delivery service.
And then once we all stop yelling at each other, then the kids will want to come. Right?
But look, like some families, like there are different ways of communicating. They're not always bad.
Well, back to like, I was putting my son to bed last night. And he's 10 and he runs hot, but he wants those cuddles at night. Like that is his time.
You got to give him.
Right? So we're laying in bed, snuggling, the lights are off. And
it's so sweet.
I was like, what do you do at recess? And he's like, I hang out with my two buddies. He's like, I'm not really a sportsy guy. And I'm like, you're playing soccer, you play water polo. He's like, yeah, but like, I'm not fast. I'm not really like, and he's like, I'm more of like a music-y guy. I'm like, well, there's room for everybody. I'm like, there's room for the music-y drama guy. And he's like, well, I'm not so much drama. I was like, well, excuse me, you cause a lot of drama. And we both started laughing. And it was just like, can we just make a joke out of, but I thought that was actually like really nice progress because he knows it.
Yeah.
I know it.
Well, and it was done in a playful, warm and loving way. It wasn't like it wasn't meant to start an argument.
No, right? Not at all.
Yeah,
and
it was meant as like an affectionate.
Yeah. Yes, it was. Yeah. It was meant to be affectionate, but it was just kind of one of those things. It's like, okay, maybe it's going to be okay.
It is going to be okay.
And I do think
it is going to be okay.
I do think that as modern moms, and I don't mean to alienate dads at all, but I can only speak through my lens of being a mom. For modern moms, right now, this current moment in time, I just wonder how we are going to look back on it. And I told you earlier that going back to school this year, it's gratitude on a level that I did not know was possible. But looking back on my pictures of last year and, knowing how sad it was to have a kid alone in the basement, that's triggering. And you look back at the last year of how much we as parents have had to dig down and put on a good face and not really process our own emotions about it just because there hasn't been time alone to process.
Right.
I think we need to acknowledge that too.
And I think it's really looked different for other families, for lots of families. So there's definitely some families who I've worked with who have put the children's needs first to the detriment of their own needs, right? That's one narrative. There are others who I know who have been like, you're on your own. I have no space left to give to you. And I know people in between, right? So every family has had to really chart their own path forward. I think it's really hard. But I do think kids are resilient, and I think parents are resilient. Families are resilient. I have a lot of hope for where things will go from here. People keep talking about like, oh, it's Generation C. It's permanently shaping these kids, but it doesn't mean that it has to be in a bad way.
Yeah.
These kids just learned that a once in 100-year thing can happen to them, and really scary things have happened to them. And some kids have experienced really awful consequences, health or economic or whatever, just as was what's been going on. And, our job as a society and as parents is to help them get out of this, to show them that they can overcome, not unlike, the struggles of the greatest generation or other, the children of 9/11, what they have experienced in terms of that. And so this is yet another opportunity, granted one that nobody asked for, to really teach our children resilience.
Well, and I look at, I'm 43. my generation, we haven't dealt with something like this. And so for me, it's a powerful reminder too, to where, things can go south quick.
For sure.
And that's not to say that people haven't had their own circumstances and all of these things, but where the collective has had to go through something is a pretty interesting place to be. But I do think being away from other parents has really made us feel like we are in this alone. And I think it's important to remember that we're not, and also that we don't need to beat ourselves up all the time.
No. And I think that there are really good resources out there. There are, the formal resources that people can activate in terms of, therapy or support groups. There are informal resources that can be activated, like following Instagram accounts or Twitter accounts.
Like Parent with Science.
But, there's also, big parent coaching. I mean, there are things that you can do to rebuild a community, to check in, to help balance your priorities. And those are all opportunities. There's books you can read. There are friends you can call. It's like, who are you activating? Like, where is your support coming from?
I think for me, the reminder too that I need all the time is that it's never too late, right? Like, it's never too late. Like, you can, and you're going to screw up. But if you're talking to your kid about it and saying, when I did this, this is how I felt.
Yeah. And I actually think that there's an interesting thing about this generation of parents is that there's a tendency to not want to show your children your failures, to not talk about your own failures. Because from the eyes of your child, you have always been whatever it is you are. You have things that they don't have, like a couch or a job or friends and a car and control. They don't know the path that you've walked to get there, all the mistakes that you've made along the way. And a lot of times parents forget to talk about those things with their kids until something hits the fan, when they're like 17 and the kids' minds are blown that you also had this struggle. What? You had a breakup? You ever dated anybody other than the person I know you with? And so there is a need, I think, to be more open with our kids in a developmentally appropriate way.
Yes.
And in a way that does not make your child your friend.
Right. And that's another distinction you talk about in the book, which I think is super interesting, about not being your child's friend.
Yeah. You can't be your child's friend because then you lose all authority or power to shift a dynamic.
It was a powerful realization, I think, too, because I think we all want that to a certain extent.
Well, we want our kids to like us. And that's really why, my favorite analogy is the idea of the benevolent employer, right? Which I talk about in the book. If you are, think about the most awesome boss you've ever had. They were tough, but they were fair and you knew that they liked you and you would have fun together. But at the end of the day, they'd be like, hey, get your business done.
Yeah.
And also, here's the 10 things you need to improve upon. I really want to promote you, but you got to fix these 5 things first. Okay, right? Like, that's like what a good boss does. And they nurture, they support you, they help you find the training that you need, whatever, to succeed. That's what your job is as a parent. You don't want the boss who's your friend, right?
They're too close.
It's too much.
You learn too much.
Yeah. And actually, it's the whole thing. But like,
that's another topic.
Yeah, we're not going to go there. But, when you think about it in that way, you're trying to grow your kid to be the CEO of their own family someday, whatever family it is they choose, or whatever life it is they choose.
I think this whole idea of growing them up to release them is something that we lose.
Because you're focused in the moment.
You're focused in the moment, and that is what we think about because we are in the moment on Instagram. We are in the moment on Facebook, but we are not realizing the end goal of the value cake is that your kids get those values baked into them and then take them out into the world.
Well, I understand why it happens. Do you have food to make for dinner tonight? Do you know what I mean? Do you have the school supplies? Do you have the whatever? It's like there are so many mundane tasks that you take care of during the day. Like, do you have formula for the baby? Do you have the coat that you need because the weather's changing and the preschool requires, whatever it is. Like there's so many of these like checkmark tasks that happen that we very rarely take a moment to step back to think about, like, how am I living this family life? Am I living this family life in a way that is good for me, as good for my children, that I am enjoying, that I know is successful, scientifically rooted in helping my kids thrive? That's really the place for this. This is like a place to relax, to read a book, to take a break, to think about what it is you're doing in a way that ultimately it doesn't take away from those mundane tasks, but it's just a way to check that you're seeing the big picture.
But that is it right there. Because in taking the time to read this book, this was the first time since March 2020 that I had actually taken the time to reflect. Right?
Right.
And I think that's just it. It's like the mundane tasks feel, like you said, the emotional Mount Everest.
Yeah.
But that's it. And so for me, and I would argue, maybe I'll challenge everybody who's listening to this podcast to use the new school year as your time to maybe just check back in with yourself, with your parenting, because I think kind of we just need to forgive whatever's happened over the last 18 months. Good, bad, because there have been both parts of that.
Absolutely.
But just to give yourself kind of a pass as a human being and come back to saying, okay, as we go into this holiday season and as we go into whatever is going to happen next, because it still feels so unknown, as we go into this next phase, can I, now that the rug isn't being pulled out for me every 5 seconds, can I circle the wagons and say, this is what's going to be important to me this year, and take the learnings from COVID and what you liked about how you parented through that, what you didn't like, and maybe try to make this next phase different, or if it wasn't good for you, to make it better.
Do you know what's really interesting that you just said this, and it makes me think of this, is that I've talked to a number of parents over the last year where COVID has provided an opportunity for their family, at least here in Washington, the Seattle area, where everything's shut down.
Yeah.
So all of a sudden, you know, the many extracurricular or obligations that people had were gone for a period of time. And as they are rolling back into an opportunity, it's been very interesting to watch the extent to which some people have jumped right back in to their pre-levels, and other people have been much more conscientious about it, and thinking about, you know, I enjoyed having more time together as a family. I enjoyed that we were home for dinner more, or whatever it was. You know, we could have Friday nights together, whatever the ritual was. So there have been opportunities in this, and you know, it's a place for us to think about what we want to keep and what we want to get rid of.
Yeah. Just
like it always should be is an evaluation, right? What's working, what's not working. I mean, that's part of being present. But it's also, we've had this sort of unique experiment. What do we really miss? Like vacation.
Like vacation.
Vacation.
Like leaving Seattle.
Airplanes. It's funny to miss an airplane, right?
Oh,
like
God.
Think of the inconvenience of airplane travel.
What I
that
wouldn't
sounds
give.
Delightful.
So good.
Like I've been delayed 12 hours in Newark. That sounds great.
Let's get another coffee.
But so, you know, I think that that's exactly right. We should all be rethinking what it is we want to keep, what we don't want to keep. That's extra true this year, maybe because of what we've all experienced, but it is a perpetual job as a family leader to be going through this, you know?
Well, I think too, in looking at the last year, it's an interesting thing to take stock of what you've done well and what you haven't done well, right? And I look back on this and I'm like, I have done a terrible job trying to figure out space for myself.
Yeah.
Horrible.
You put everything else before yourself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And, you know, it's little things like, you know, my Peloton, which is now, I mean, I'd probably save my children first, but I would definitely go for the Peloton like real fast after that.
It's real heavy. I don't know how you're going to carry it out.
I will find a way. I will find, but I mean, it's things like that are just little nuggets to preserve your sanity.
But yes, that's it. Preserve your sanity. So working out, that's not self-care. That's like basic body care. That's very different from doing the work of like, am I restored?
Right.
Am I in a place, am I in a calm state, refreshed, replenished, that I can re-engage in my family life? Certainly we do have to exercise, and it does take the edge off. I mean, if I don't work out for like 3 days in a row, my kids are like, Mom, like, you need to go away.
Mom, would you please
go run like really far, far.
Mom, go hit your PR. Yeah. Just go put Cody on and just hit that PR, Mom. Do it.
Get that Peloton ride.
You need that Britney Spears ride.
But everybody needs.
Everybody needs the Britney Spears ride.
Who doesn't need that? But you know what I'm saying? It's like, this is a classic parenting thing, I think. And I think moms are really guilty of this. I went and I got my hair cut, and that was my self-care this week. No, that's just basic body care. I took a shower.
Like,
that
I
was
showered.
That's right. Yeah. Am I right?
Do you want to know?
I worked out. I took a shower. That's not self-care.
I just did this. My friend was like, what'd you do on the first day of school? I'm like, I took the longest shower I've ever taken in my life.
Which is great.
And that felt luxurious.
Maybe that is self-care because you were in there for a long time. It wasn't like, I rubbed a bar of Dove soap on my body, right? Like, that's like very different. And so I really think if you ask people, especially, these modern stressed out moms, what did you do to take care of yourself in the last week? Their answers are silly things. They're not silly. I mean, they're important, but it's like, I worked out. I took a shower. And
you're describing me. I'm like, oh no, I walked Target by myself.
Right? That was doing a chore. You did a chore and you're counting that as self-care? Like, no.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying I'm good at it either. I mean, I'm not like, I was like working out at like 6 a.m. this morning because you're busy, and it's like, we're all doing our best. But the idea of self-care needs to be expanded a bit to be more about like replenishing our mind, calming our mind, taking time to be present in our lives, to think about what's working, what's not working, to recharge ourselves in a way that, a 30-minute ride or a 30-minute shower is not going to cut it.
No. And the simple act of allowing information in, that's not,
whether you like it or not,
that's like that's not current event related, right? Because I'm pretty overloaded on that.
Yeah.
But allowing information in that gave me pause and made me think, that is self-care, because it's exactly what you said, like giving yourself the space to reflect on things. And sometimes they're not comfortable.
No.
Right? Like reading this book and reading the yelling part, you're like, oh God, this is tough, but that's okay. And the way that it's written and the way that we need to think about it as moms is not like you're a miserable failure. It's like, let's circle the wagons a little bit, have that family meeting if you need to have it, and talk about it.
Yeah, exactly. Like put yourself in a position of power, right?
Right. And it's possible to own your stuff and be like, this was not the appropriate way for me to.
Yeah. You do have to own it. And
deal
also,
with this.
Nobody should be doom scrolling. It's not good for anybody. Stop the parent doom scrolling.
No. So. And it's, but I do think it's never too late to reevaluate. Maybe that can be, it's never too late to reevaluate.
Exactly.
But
you're right. No, there's always room for improvement. And that's the thing is that like, let's have this conversation that we can all be better parents. There are things we can do to make ourselves better parents, and they're going to work. Like we know what to do. We know how to help support kids and help them thrive. And the extent to which we can empower people to take charge of that, to make positive changes, even small ones, they add up. They make a difference.
Well, Kate, we're going to keep coming back to you for help. And I think we need to do a follow-up episode all about adolescence, because so many of us are in this spot and reading books and trying to figure out how to support our kids and garden them, as you said, but it is easier in principle than in practice.
100%.
So thank you for your time, doctor. Thank you for sharing your expertise with the world, because it would have been an easy move for you to stay in academia, talking to students, but you came out to meet the people that really need you. And that is parents. We really do. So thank you for coming out of the classroom.
Well, thanks for having me, Shannon. I really appreciate it. This has been so fun.
Yes, I am a parent that has a problem not yelling at my kids, but I'm working on it and I'm talking about it with my children. I am actively trying to be better. And at the end of the day, isn't that what life is about? At this current moment in time, I'm honestly struggling with the thought that what I'm doing is impacting my kids, and that's not very relaxing at all. Thank you so much, Dr. Kate, for coming on and doing your damnedest to support us parents that are feeling on the edge of this last year. I've been applying these strategies, albeit imperfectly, for the last couple of weeks, and I'd be lying if I said it's not making a difference in my house, even in small ways. The biggest thing for me is to come back to my values, apologize, and try to recognize my own emotions before I explode. The mommy timeout is truly invaluable, I'm learning. Links to buy this book are in my show notes. Please give yourself a gift with this one. Thank you for listening. Please review me on iTunes and share this episode far and wide if you know other people who need to hear it. Find me on Twitter at In Front of My Face and on Instagram at Right in Front of My Face. I love DMs, so hit me if you have a topic you'd like me to explore. Take some time for yourself this week to really examine what's happening in your world. It may surprise you to find out what's happening right in front of your face.